Gender ethics is an attempt to revise, reformulate, or rethink those aspects of traditional Western ethics that only consider or usually consider the rights of one group, usually male. So, in the Caribbean, we live in a male dominated society. We live in a patriarchal society. So, a lot of our moral values are not just gendered, but they usually consider the rights of one group or the other. Now, according to feminist philosopher Addison Jagger, traditional Western ethics usually fails women, and they fail women in several ways. Firstly, she says that it shows greater concerns for women's as opposed to men's interests and rights. So the issue of abortion or the issue of rape or domestic violence, she's saying that it gives lesser concern for women as opposed to men's rights. Secondly, it dismisses as morally uninteresting the problems that arise in the so-called private world, the realm in which women cook, clean, and care for the young, the old, and the sick. So what happens in the domestic sphere? How do we treat issues of domestic violence or intimate partner violence? Thirdly, Jagger mentions that feminist ethics, it overvalues cultural masculine. Traditional Western ethics, rather, overvalues cultural masculine traits such as independence, autonomy, reason, and it undervalues cultural feminine traits like emotion, peace, nature. So I mentioned earlier that it's not just careers that are gendered, and we did speak about how emotions and physical attributes are gendered as well. Fourth, it favors cultural masculine ways of moral reasoning over cultural feminine ways of moral reasoning that emphasizes partiality and relationships. We now move on to models of gender in ethics, and we will look at 4 models of gender in ethics, which are posited by Sandra Gilligan. Now, Sandra Gilligan proposes 4 possible models of gender in ethics. One, she speaks about the separate but equal model, in which men and women have different but equally moral voices. Secondly, she speaks to the superiority thesis, which explains that women's moral voices are superior. Thirdly, integrationist thesis, which says that there's only one moral voice and it's the same for both men and women. So women's voices are not superior to men's voices are not superior. And also, men and women do not have different but equally valuable moral voices. Integrationist thesis says that we all have equal and moral voices. Only one moral voice. And lastly, she speaks to the diversity thesis, which speaks about gender in exclusionary terms. Now, what does this mean? It speaks to gender on a spectrum. So, the more masculine a person is the less feminine that person is, or vice versa. So, the more feminine someone is the less masculine they are. And oftentimes, too, we associate gender with sexuality. So, the more feminine a man is, we assume that he's an homosexual. Or the more masculine a female is, we also assume that she's a lesbian. So again, we see where the issue of gender is used also as a tool to question our sexuality. Why is it important for us not to consider that ethics should be gender neutral? because implications for science, technology, and health. And one of those implications is what we call the digital divide. Now, the digital divide refers to the gap that exists between communities that have access to information and communication technologies, ICT, and those who do not. Now, when we look at the knowledge gap hypothesis, the divide exists differential access to ICT, not just its access, but control over its use, different levels of literacy and technological skills, and access to quality and useful digital content. And this exists particularly in developing societies where women do not have access to higher education, particularly STEM. In these societies, the digital divide is oftentimes wider. So the uneven distribution of ICT within societies, it reflects a division between the information haves and have-not, on many lines that often overlap within countries by race, ethnic group, class, age, region, and gender, between countries, and globally between those who have access to abundant information resources and those who do not have this access. Now, women, particularly within developing countries, are in the deepest part of this divide, further removed from the information age than are the men whose poverty they share. So, even in developing countries where there are high rates of poverty, you still find that even in these societies. So again, why is it important to consider gender in science and technology? It is important because one, women accounts for over half the world's population, but they're also underrepresented in science and technology. Women are the caregivers in our families, the primary caregivers. Also, women are more likely than men to be poor. And in our 2013 statistics in Jamaica, we're seeing that 60.2% of the unemployed labor force are women. And also, because women are central to sustainable development issues, given their roles and responsibilities in the families and also community. So in essence, science should be used to provide information to better enable formulation and selection of development policies in a gender-sensitive decision-making process. So science, gender, and technology should be brought together by one, gender-sensitive teaching material to overcome the barriers to gender-based access and successful completion of scientific, technical, and vocational education. So gender science and technology is an essential means for realizing the full potential of communities worldwide and for orienting scientific and technical progress towards meeting the needs of all mankind. So in Jamaica we speak about Vision 2030. So in order for us to achieve Vision 2030, an essential component of that, it would mean that we need to orient science and technological processes towards meeting our needs by incorporating gender-sensitive teaching materials to overcome these barriers. Additionally, we will now look at health issues that are influenced by gender. Some of these health issues that are important from a gender perspective are: one, abortion and women's access to health technologies, for example, the female condom; cultural perceptions about femininity and women's bodies, which leads to poor nutrition, such as eating disorders, such as obesity and anorexia. And even more importantly, now we see where the agent of socialization, the media, is more influential now than before. In the early days, in the 90s or in the 80s, for example, without the absence of social media, then what influenced young women mostly were magazines, and the concept of beauty, what it means to be beautiful, was always the pencil thin model on the magazine cover, which influenced or affected women's self-confidence and their acceptance of themselves, which led to eating disorders. Now, we're seeing a shift in that, where what is now in are curves. So more women now are opting to do cosmetic enhancement to their bodies, with everyone wanting to have that Instagram body to look like Kim Kardashian or Yannick Curvy Diva. Also, health issues influenced by gender are not just issues that affect women, men are also affected. So, for example, men are more likely to suffer injury because they are risk takers, and are more likely to suffer prolonged illnesses because they are less likely to seek early medical intervention. So, it has been established that men are risk takers, so men are more likely to engage in dangerous stunts. Men are more likely to drive faster than women, and thus men experience more road crashes than women. Also, going to the doctor is not seen as very masculine, so men tend to suffer from prolonged illnesses because they might be sick, and instead of seeking medical attention, they will procrastinate in seeking medical attention. Also, women are more exposed to STI due to gender-based violence or intimate partner violence, particularly because of the unequal power relations between women and men in our society. And again, we see where men are at higher risk for certain health complications, such as those resulting from lung cancer, because smoking, for example, is seen as macho, and drinking alcohol is also seen as macho. So this puts men in a vulnerable position where their health are more likely to be compromised. So a focus on gender in health research would mean a closer interaction between social issues, such as how women perceive medical technologies and their access and capability to use them. An examination of the societal conditions under which women have to use these medical or health technologies, appropriate infrastructure and clinics, for example, and involvement in the initial laboratory stage.